Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Victory Never Sleeps. We have some really great guests tonight that I'm excited that have joined us. We've got Githia Sheila McNallen, and we also have Mrs. Madison East. I believe, is this your first time on VNS, Madison?
Yes, it is.
It is. So we've seen a lot of, we've heard a lot about Mrs. East over the course of VNS, but this is her very first time coming on to the show. So thank you, ma'am, for coming on. It's going to be a great episode. I believe Githia Katie is going to be joining us here in just a little bit. So we are going to have some great conversation and some fun things happening tonight. So glad you all here with us. So a couple top of the show things. We should start out with where you can find us and where you can listen to this later if you are not watching it live. We are on Odyssey, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble, YouTube, VK. We are also streaming on Apple, Spotify, our iHeartRadio, and Amazon. So there's all kinds of places to catch up. The best way to participate is live, so you can interact with us on here, ask us questions, get some answers, have a good time in the chat. But if you do have to listen afterwards, catch us on the replays on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Amazon. All right, we got a couple things coming up. In February, we do have Charming of the Plow at Njordshof, February 21st through the 23rd. That is going to be at Njordshof in Florida. Tickets are on sale at runestone.org, and I do believe there's going to be a lot of folks there. Madison, you are going to be at Charming of the Plow, correct?
Yes.
Yes, she is. You and her husband Go the East will be there, along with many other members of our leadership are going to be there as well. So definitely go get your tickets. It's going to be a great time. Celebrate with your folk and honor the God. A couple of other things that we want to announce. We are still doing great in the Asatru Academy, and we actually have Githia McNallen here tonight, who works very, very hard with that program. If you have any questions about the Asatru Academy, please reach out to, yes, wonderful. Go to asatruacademy.org, reach out to Go the Rob Stam. You can reach out to Githia McNallen. You can also reach out to folk builder Sarah Alt, who is one of our leading folk builders and really paving the way on that program. So thank you to all of you that are involved for making that program a reality and helping to educate our children. Also, Nick, do we have an update on Njordshof? Paying off Njordshof.
I mean, we would if I had the graphic ready, but I don't. But I can give you some numbers.
Well, how about our producer Nick? Go ahead and give us our current numbers for Njordshof.
Okay. Where did they go? I lost them.
Well, while he's looking for them. Ways that you can donate to Njordshof. If you want to go ahead and go onto the Njordshof website, or you can go onto runestone.org and donate to the Njordshof Fund. Help us pay off that Hof. We have made incredible progress over the past couple of years getting that paid off. Always stress to the folk, remember that every gift that you give to these Hofs is literally a gift to the gods. You know, this is part of the gifting cycle. We are building them temples here on Midgard. We are keeping, their names on our lips here. We are keeping their worship alive and well. And building those temples has become a very important part of doing that and a gift for those gods. So please remember, a gift to those Hofs is a gift to those gods. Make that part of your gift cycle if you can. With everybody's help, we can get that paid off even quicker and progress our forward motion on Friðr.
All righty, I got some numbers here for us as soon as this loads.
All right.
We are right about a little bit better than we were last time we talked about it, so that's always good. Here it is. There we go.
There we go. So that looks like a couple of the fundraisers that we've got going on. We've got Njordshof there. Looks like a remaining percentage that we have is 23.41%. We have already paid off 76.59% of Njorthof with $57,000 remaining. That is amazing. We've also got Sigerheim up there on our way, making progress on that. That is amazing as well. Future for the AFA. And also the Baldershof steeple. We are making great plans for that, learning how to do special projects so we can make that even more beautiful and rebuild that steeple. That's such a beautiful part of Baldershof. We are looking at raising about $20,000 for that. With your help so far, we have already raised $1,500 and some change. So thank you, folk, for your generosity. You are part of the reason why we can do all the great things that we're doing. We appreciate your support. And again, remember, gifting to the church is a gift to the gods, because that's what we're using it for. All right. So we do got a couple questions I do just want to kind of get off the bat before we get started. Also, Nick, would now be a good time to talk about our giveaway tonight? I think it would be. So tonight we're going to ask you to participate in the chat. We are going to ask you questions, and we would like you to think about them and put the answers in the chat and engage with each other. And our producer, Nick, will be writing down your name and putting it into a random generator. And at the end of the show tonight, producer Nick is going to tell us whose name popped out of that generator. And whose name popped out of the generator will be receiving a copy of Heimskringla, the Lee Hollander edition. It is a very heavy tome. So for those of you that are familiar with our Days of Remembrance, our heroes, several of our heroes do come. Their information is found in this book. So definitely something that is good on a shelf if you don't have it already. I will send this off tomorrow, or as soon as you get your address after Nick tells us who that winner is tonight. We will have you send your name and address to our producer, Nick. He can pop his email address up on the screen here, and we will get that information, and we will get this book sent off to you. All
Can
right.
I participate?
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. I'll tell my husband to do it. He can be in the chat.
There you go. Absolutely. So this is going to be one of those episodes where rather than us just talk, we want to get you to talk with each other in that chat room. Also, don't forget to subscribe, to like, and to share. If you know someone that might be interested in what we're doing, interested in building that relationship with their gods, please send them our way. Runestone.org, any of our Hof websites, send them here. Send them VNS. All right. So tonight we are going to talk about Beauty and Friðr. Before that, we do have a couple questions I want to get to before we get right into it. We did have a question right off the bat here from Amber in Illinois. Whenever homosexuality comes up, it seems like discussions always focuses on males. Are lesbians not also a bad influence on the kid folk? Yes. So when you become a member of the Asatru Folk Assembly, you are stating that you are a heterosexual white person. You are not saying that you are a lesbian on the side. You are not saying that you are into that lifestyle. That is not a lifestyle that we support. Now, I know that a lot of the focus tends to be on the males, but the reason that is because there is a difference between that relationship. You know, there is a difference between that act in particular. There are things that once they happen, they cannot be undone, right? But is that lifestyle a negative influence on our children regardless of gender? Yes, it is a negative influence regardless of gender, and is not something that we would support as a active member of the Asatru Folk Assembly. And then the second question that we've got on there is, what is the AFA stance on stuff like IVF, foster parenting, or adoption if a woman can't conceive or thinks she is too old? If you are a woman that wants to bring another, child to the folk, please do what you need to do to bring another child to the folk. Take care of those kids that maybe you might be what can give them a better life. By all means, take care of that child. Raise them with our values. Teach them to honor the gods and the heroes. And teach them to honor the ancestors, even if they are not blood ancestors. Our heroes are still their ancestors. Our mothers, our grandmothers, those are still ancestors, A lot of folk do tend to have a hard time connecting to the ancestors when there's someone who does not know what that lineage is. But remember, just because you may not know the name of your grandmother or the name of your grandfather, that doesn't mean that they are not still there. That doesn't mean that they don't know you. That doesn't mean that you can't honor our heroes, that you can't honor honored members of the folk who have passed through the veil, your friends that have passed through the veil. It's wonderful to speak their names if you know their names and tell their story if you know their stories. But I personally believe that they know you even if you don't know their names. Would either of our Githias like to comment on that? Go ahead, Katie.
So something that it's important to remember too is that the Asatru Folk Assembly is forward facing, and we believe in science. So when I say that, what I mean is if you need medical intervention in order to be able to conceive a child, do it, because that is a positive advancement in science that can help our folk. We believe that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. But yes, we believe in science, and we believe that we should take advantage of the things that will help us to move forward to advance our folk. So as far as IVF goes, I know that there's a lot of sort of contention about it because it's unnatural, because you're using science to make it happen. But I don't see why that would be a problem if it means that you get to have a baby. Because I think for me personally, being a mother is like literally the best thing that ever happened in my life. And if I hadn't been able to do it naturally, I sure as hell would have pursued help. And if that wasn't going to work, well, I don't see why adopting would be bad. Adopting or fostering a white child that would otherwise have ended up in very unhealthy situations through foster care, or perhaps by being adopted into a family that was going to raise it in a way that would have been anti our folk. If you can take that child and bring them in and give them a healthy background, I feel like why wouldn't you if you can do that? If that's your option. Obviously, I think you should have your own children first if you can, but that is not the reality for all of us. So that is all. You're muted, Brandy.
Sorry about that. Githia McNallen, do you have any thoughts on that?
There we go. Okay, I'm unmuted. Yeah, I agree very much like Katie. I think that the whole thing of fostering, as was done in the past, reminds us that it is okay to bring children into our homes and guide them the best way we can. We don't have that though in this society. We know that there are a lot of kids who are struggling with their parents, living in poverty and whatever. But somehow, we don't have that in our own church, where people have become desperate enough to say, please take my child. I think a lot of us would, and whether it would ever come to an adoption thing, that's something else. But obviously, to help nurture a child of our folk is important. And I would say definitely, if people really want to have a child and they can't have one in the way they would like, and they have the means to raise a child well, definitely look into adoption, or talk with our folk and see who might be out there who's needing a home. And we should be there to help support all of our families who have children, regardless of the nature of that birth, so long as it is a white family that we end up with, because that's what we want for our own children to be raised with.
Thank you, ma'am. And I also want to just put out there, because this does come up sometimes when some of our women folk are unable to be mothers. And it's something that we've talked about in the women's group, and we've talked about on women's calls, is there are so many phases of femininity. Motherhood is one of those phases, just one. You can be a daughter, you can be a sister, you can be a friend, you can be a mother, you can be a wife, you can be an aunt, you can be a desir, great-grandmother, grandmother, mother. But it's not just motherhood. For those that are unable to be a mother, being a mother myself, I understand how that can hurt and that can be painful. And you feel like maybe you don't have something to add. But what I want to tell those ladies that are in that situation, you have arms that can console a crying child. You have women who need a shoulder and a friend and a confidant and support. You have all of these children that you may not be their mother and you may not be their auntie by blood, but they still watch you. They watch how you do your hair, how you hold yourself. They watch how you react to situations. They see everything that you do. And to be 100% honest, some of you aunties that are not the moms, for some of these kids between the ages of 12 and 18, you're cooler than we moms are, okay? They will listen to you in times that they won't listen to us. They see you as role models. They see you as strength. They see you as a woman. You are just as much a woman to those children or to those other women as the rest of us who have had a child. So I just wanted to say that motherhood is a blessing and it's absolutely wonderful and it's great. But there are so many other aspects of femininity that you can show these children. So many examples that you can be, so many ways that you can be an inspiration and still help raise these kids. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Run into that? Ideas? Go ahead, Sheila.
Yeah, well, obviously at my age, where I'm not just a grandmother, but a great-grandmother, there's that role in life simply wonderful and something to really anticipate for all women who get to that point. But we all, as we do get older, play the role of grandmother for our kids, especially if they're around our hof. So if they're in our kindreds, it is such an important time in life for the children as well as the elder who gets to build those relationships. Sarah and I had this experience with her son this last weekend, which was really cute. And apparently he made up some little song about me. And I don't get to see him that much, but the time I had with him was important enough that he wrote the sweetest little song. And I loved the time we had together this last weekend. And you know, it's every child is precious to us, and we need to be equally as warm and loving as we can to the children that we're around in our folk. So, regardless of our age, but
Absolutely.
this time will come to all where we are the elders and we're the great aunts, if not the aunts at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and I will admit my sons, the people that they view as their aunties, are so much cooler than their mom. I'm gonna say that they are so much cooler than mom. You know, I can say one thing, and they go whatever, mom, but Githia Plord says it. Oh, it's the word of the gods. You know, so all the aunties are cooler than their mom. So I want you guys all to know that you hold sway over these young men and women. All right, we do got another question I'm going to give to you guys. Coming up on February 1st is the Remembrance Day for King Einfrith of Bernicia. How will each of you be honoring him in his memory? So we are making a really big push for folk to worship together, right? We may be separated by states, countries, continents sometimes. The worship of the folk is like a giant bonfire, okay? I want you to think about that. So when all of the folk are worshiping and doing something together, that creates that folk flame. It's a giant bonfire. It's a giant light for our gods to see. When you do things individually, yes, you will be a spark in that fire. You'll be like that spark that jumps out for a second. There'll be a brief light and it'll catch an attention, but then the focus is always on that fire. When we worship together, when we do things together, the same time, the same day, the same purpose, that fire gets bright, it gets hot, and it really takes the notice of the gods, in my opinion. So I definitely invite all of you to celebrate the days of remembrance. Celebrate the holidays. We also have been posting in our spiritual excellence group. If you are a member of the AFA and you are not on MeWe yet, you are missing out. That's where the action happens. Please go there. We are doing a Wednesday devotional that we are asking families to honor one of the Aesir, their wives, the ancestors, Asinir, celestial wardens, all of these beings that deserve honor, right? So we're choosing one of them every week, and those are being posted up into the spiritual excellence page. And Nick kind of has, I think you might have one of the pictures that we're posting up is just something of inspiration. This is going to be an example of beauty. Something that we want you to focus on, the beauty of the gods, the power of the gods. We want you to focus on that as a group, as a folk, and make that folk flame burn especially bright on Wednesdays. So I'm going to encourage all of you on Wednesdays, celebrate with your family, talk about the god, the goddess, talk about the ancestors, whatever it is that's posted on that Wednesday. Join us in building that folk flame. And then afterwards, celebrate with your family, and then come watch on VNS and continue the honoring and the celebration of the Aesir. So find that in the Spiritual Excellence group on MeWe. So that being asked, Sarah would like to know how each of us plan to celebrate on February 1st for our hero, King Einfried of Bernicia. Githia Erickson, would you like to go first on that?
Sure. So my daughter is up here with me because she's being extra clingy these days. So I'm sorry if you hear My Little Ponies in the background. Because we have little kids, we tend to keep things very, very simple. Because we try to make everything we do for our entire family, which means we have to make it for a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. So usually what we do is Witan Erickson prints out the picture of the hero, and we have a special picture frame that we put it in. We have that picture on the table with us when we sit down for dinner. We serve the hero a meal. He eats with us, or we give him a part of what we are eating, and then usually either myself or my husband will explain to the children who our hero is, why we are honoring him. We ask them to try and come up with examples of ways that the hero is relevant to us in modern times. It's easier said than done. Usually we ask them and then we give them answers because they're not quite old enough to make those connections. Although my son Owen, he's pretty quick. Sometimes he's savvier than I give him credit for, but that's usually what we do. Every once in a while, and I say because we're not doing it when it's like negative 1,000 degrees and our backyard is like 6 inches deep in snow right now, but we might light a fire and go out and do a small bloat or ritual to remember the hero. But we have a pretty simple system, and it's what we use every time, because when you build it consistently, then the children, it becomes normal and routine, and it becomes just what they do. And once it's just what they do, then we can make it fancy and elaborate. I'd much rather this become, and by this I mean Asatru and the worship of our heroes and our gods and our ancestors, to be so ingrained in everything that they do that it never even occurs to them that they're doing something that not everybody else does. So yeah, keep it stupid simple. Simple stupid, whichever, both.
Githia McNally, how do you plan on celebrating that feast day in your home? I think you're muted, Sheila.
I am just figuring this out, how to do it on this yard stream or whatever it is. Well, I'm going to be out at the Hoff this weekend. It's a work weekend. We're getting ready for Charming of the Plow. We never really did a thorough cleaning following Yule, and there's a lot of organization that needs to happen. So I'll be out at Odin's Hoff in the rain. We have like 5 or 6 days of rain coming in, but I think it's a wonderful place to be with other people and to be introducing them to another one of our heroes. I am not familiar with him yet, so I will have to learn and share the knowledge with others who also do not yet know. But we'll remember. That's an easy one to remember. February 1st. Nice way of starting off the year. And I think because that's where I'll be, that's what I'll be doing, is educating others on this obviously a great man.
And Mrs. East, I got a question for you regarding celebrations at home. So how you live with a Gothi, right? So how does it feel to have a Gothi in your home that can lead you in those celebrations? Has that made a difference in your practice and how you do that?
I'm very fortunate because I didn't come into the AFA prior to knowing Trent, so I never had to wing it. That's definitely a huge bonus. I didn't have to really wing it or do things myself solo, and so that's probably the biggest bonus, is that he's pretty much always been around for my whole journey.
That's a good benefit to have. You have an in-home Gothi. That's pretty great. All right. And we do have some donations I want to give some shout outs to. We've got GW Farnsworth brought us 5 coffees. That is $25. Thank you so much for that. Alexander Casto bought us a coffee as well. Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate that. And Angela in New Hampshire donated $25 to the VNS fund. Thank you so much. That really helps to keep this platform going and get all of these great thoughts and these great people out to you. Thank you so much. All right, a couple more questions before we get into the meat and potatoes of what we're getting into tonight. I know it's 8:28, guys. Hang in there. We haven't even started on Beauty and Friðr yet, but you guys are active in the chat. I want to get those questions answered before we start getting into too much. Stick with us because those giveaway opportunities are coming. Okay. We got a question. From Lauren, how did you come home to Asatru? Could you tell us about your journey? Madison, could you tell us your story? I know I've already talked about mine quite a bit on VNS, but let's hear from Madison on that.
So I was never really religious. I wasn't raised to be specifically Christian or anything. Like it wasn't a huge thing pushed on me. I was more the friend that people would invite to come to church with you, just to they'd get like extra candy or some kind of brownie points for bringing a friend. That I was that person. When I would go, I did not like that. Did not enjoy the community very much. But then I got with Trent, and he was like, I'm in this church and it's different. And I was like, okay. But he had told me how important it was to him and how the people were so important. And I was like, okay, well, I need to meet these people. I need to know who they are. I need to know, like, these people are like your family, essentially. So I need to, see what it's all about. And it took me a while. I came around to events for a couple of years, was like kind of unsure of things. But like as I like kind of came into the group and became like a part of, like the group of ladies, it really was something that I couldn't see, going without. So then I finally joined in, I think, 2021, and that's kind of it.
All right, we do actually have a couple questions specifically for you, Madison. And one of them comes from Gothi Mayo. Mrs. East, what kindred are you a part of, and what is their status? Would one say elite, perhaps?
Yes, that would be Riggs Blood Kindred, the elite kindred, as we all like to introduce ourselves.
And we also have a question for you from Alexander Casto. Mrs. East, what are some common challenges you face when it comes to creating art graphics for the AFA? So before you answer that, Madison, can you let us know a little bit about what you do as our quote unquote art lady and what kind of journey that has taken you on through the years, and then go ahead and answer his question.
I don't even think it's a quote unquote. It is officially Art Lady listed on her email.
It is.
It is. So I can't tell you how many years it's been now, but at some point I started doing graphic design for the AFA, and it just became more and more projects being done. And yeah, I kind of started to put my own like spin on things, my own style, I guess, that I thought really fit with the AFA. And what was the other question?
The other question that they had was, what challenges do you face when it comes to creating the arts and graphics?
There's a couple, I guess, that come to mind. Sometimes I don't exactly understand what's being asked of me. You know, what people have in their head doesn't always show up in my head or something, which that's a whole other thing. Is I don't have any visuals in my head. I just see black. I can't visualize. So when I quote unquote have something in my head, I don't know what that looks like until it's right in front of my face. So I tweak and I tweak until it's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big one. Other than that, just not knowing, exactly how something should look if it's like an illustration, and that's where Witan Swan really comes in handy, and we collaborate. So.
All right, and another question that we have specifically for you, Madison, is how does it feel to be part of the Besteshof?
It is great. It's great being part of the Besteshof. We have the bestest ladies, and I got the bestest Gothi. So
good answer, ma'am. All right, a couple more questions here. Pam, I do see your question, but I think we're going to answer that when we get into the meat of what we're talking about tonight. So bear with me, ma'am. We are not skipping over you. I'm just going to knock some of these other ones out of the way before we get started. All right. Luke Hightower asks, what are your thoughts on promiscuity with women who are in the AFA? So what I think about that is the woman's business, to be honest. One thing that I do want to stress is that while I may not, as a Githia, proclaim public judgment over what people do, sometimes you always have to remember you need to do what's best for you, but that doesn't mean that you are not subjected to the judgment of the folk. So when people make mistakes or people do things that you don't like or you don't believe is right, that judgment is a natural thing that happens within the folk. That's real. That's real. If a woman is promiscuous in the AFA, is she necessarily going to get removed from the AFA? No. That's her business and what she's doing. We're not policing her. Be smart about your actions and in your decisions. However, always know that whether you're a man or a woman, you may not be removed from the church. You may not be, we're not going to discipline you. We're spiritual leaders, not your parents. But always remember that the folk see that too. The folk may judge you, and that is something that has always been a part of our culture. They used to outlaw people, right? For things that they were removed from the folk, and folk treated them as they saw fit, right? So while it may not necessarily be a spiritual talking to from one of us Githias, we may counsel you on, decisions and being impulsive and what's going on. Are you okay? Are you okay? But women, especially, and this will come into some of these virtues that we're going to be talking about, women have the ability to make or break relationships with other people, right? And her decisions are often a big part of that. So yes, are the Githias going to come down on you and wag their finger? No, we're going to check on you and see if you're okay. Why are you making the decisions that you're making? Am I going to kick you out of the AFA? Not necessarily. But the folk see and the folk judge as well. You know, if you want to be defended for your actions, make sure that your actions are just and right. I cannot, nor can the Githias on this call, judge the opinion of your actions of other people. People are going to think what they're going to think. They're going to agree if they agree. And if they don't like it, they might tell you. And those are the choices those are the consequences of the choices that you make. Githias, do you have anything to add on that?
Something that occurs to me in terms of what you might call promiscuity or relationships within the AFA is be very, very careful because it takes very little to kind of unsettle the group. And when people have relationships and they split for whatever reason, obviously the closest people to them are the ones who are going to feel it the most, but it does have a much broader effect too. And, you know, I think something we do really well in the AFA is hold on to our relationships and work with them. I'm sorry about that. I'm going to mute. I've got to fit. Oh,
Yep.
We're working on our house and the saw just started outside. Anyway, so be thinking long term. If you're in a relationship, where's it going to go? And is this something that you have the ability to maintain? Do you want to make this long term? And then how's that going to look to everybody else? If it's with somebody within our church, that can be kind of problematic. So just again, caution for all people in their relationships and be thinking down the road a ways, how's it all going to turn out? Do your best, try to make it work, be very subtle, be very quiet in your relationships if you're just dating kind of a thing. I'm going to mute now.
One of the other things that I'll add about that is it is in the nature of the folk to be curious and to be in each other's business. That's real. I'm not speaking out of turn in that. That's a thing. You don't just see that in churches. You see that in school. You see that in your workplace. Everybody loves the tea, right? Everybody loves the tea. But I'm going to caution you on that a little bit because while everybody might be talking about this or that or something different, you don't always know what's going on. You don't. You know, the lives of members are their lives. You know, their private lives are their private lives. We're not in there policing what they do in their homes. You know, as long as they are not doing something that would disqualify them from being a member of the Asatru Folk Assembly, a lot of the time their lives are their lives. You know, we're here for spiritual guidance and spiritual growth. I am here to help you if you are making choices that are becoming self-destructive and you realize that those choices are being self-destructive. We are here to help you. We're here to help you. We are here to help you correct those mistakes. But I will give a word of caution to the folk in general that you don't always know what's going on with somebody. Not in the church, not at work, not where you work, not with the kids that your kids go to school with. You don't know. You see something, but that tea is like an iceberg, right? You see this much of it, but there's so much underneath that you don't see, that you don't know, that the only people that may know in the church is that person and the Gothi or Githia that they're receiving counseling from. You know, it's okay to feel some kind of way about something, but also understand that you may not always get the answer you like or the answer you want, because personal lives tend to be personal lives. Yeah, so that cuts both ways. You know, that judgment of the folk can be real, but also err on the side that your brother and your sister are doing something right, not wrong, we always want to jump to conclusions to the worst possible conclusion. We always want to jump to the most dramatic situation. It's not always the case. You know, there could be a lot going on underneath there that you just don't know about. So both sides of that coin there. All right. And this one is going to be from Jilly. The Episcopalian bishop tried to humiliate President and First Lady. Did you see a clip of her sermon? Suppose they are Asatru and you are invited to deliver the message to the Trumps. What would you say to the president and his family? So, Jilly, I'm really sorry. If you want to send that clip to me, I would like to watch it. But to be 100% honest with you, I have not seen that as of yet. So that's not something that I'm familiar with that I can speak about. Any of the other Githyas see that, have an opinion on that?
I have not seen it. I have heard about it. I know that a lot of our folk are not particularly politically minded, but my husband is, and because he is, I have become. And so we were both very excited when Trump won again. We hope for good things for our country through that. And he did tell me about the fact that this woman stood up and tried to like belittle and embarrass and I'm trying to think of the word which just left my brain as I was trying to say it. But that she got up and she was really quite inappropriate in his opinion. And all I can say is that if I were a Gidea who was invited to give a speech to the Asatru Trump, which would be odd but amazing all by itself, it would probably be very short and something along the lines of victory. I don't know. I don't think you have much you need to say to him for the future, for our future, to do great things. And yeah, I'm not really a speech giver, so, but yeah, I've heard it was pretty awful. So,
Githia McNallen, are you familiar?
Yeah, and I did watch at least part of it. I found it abhorrent that she would do that in a sacred space, which is what it was, and she made her political. It was outright just poking at the values of others. She didn't agree with them. She should have removed herself and not taken on that role. It was totally wrong, and we would never do that. And I think if we had such an honored place to give some kind of appreciation or recognition of someone who was deserving, I think we would do it with full heart and give the best we could. And she certainly did just the opposite. Would have walked out, perhaps. I mean, I'm surprised that there was not an action that took place at that point because it was so insulting what she did.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting during was it the inauguration? Whenever it was, and they had the various prayers come up, and they had the Jewish rabbi, black pastor, and the Catholic priest. They were trying to cover all bases there. Certainly didn't have any polytheists. Maybe someday we will be allowed to kind of do the same thing and be there up on the podium and give blessings for the benefit of all in our own ways and hail the gods, kind of thing, hail the Aesir. That would be kind of neat. We're not there yet, though.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, one more question, and then we're going to get into it, guys. All right, so Rune Arcadia asks, I've been thinking about joining the AFA. Quote, you should. My husband is pagan but doesn't believe in organized religion, so he isn't interested. Can I join without him? Yes. Go to the application on runestone.org, fill out the information if you qualify for membership, and send it to us. If you want your husband involved, talk to him. See if he'd be willing to come with you. Explain to him what you're doing, how important this is to you. If he's willing to support you in that, great. If not, if this is something that you want to do, as long as you qualify for membership, you honor the Aesir, and you want to join us and join what we're doing, please do. Go ahead, Katie.
So something that everything Brandy said is 100% accurate. Obviously, I agree. And I saw in the chat that you said that you would join soon, so we're very excited and looking forward to that. As far as your husband goes, I think we find a lot of our folk are sort of in this same organized religion is bad mindset, because a lot of people come from, in my experience, you don't stop being Christian, which is what most of us were. Not all of us, but most of us were before we transitioned to Asatru. You don't leave that without some sort of reason. And usually, when you have a reason for leaving a faith, you become angry about it. Some people manifest that in an outward anger. Some people manifest that in a, I'm just going to be a separatist and do my own thing forever, and I don't want to be a part of anything. It's normal, and I find personally that the best thing you can do is just join and let your husband watch the positive, hopefully positive influence joining the Asatru Folk Assembly has on your life. It had a positive influence on my life. I think all of the women on this call can agree that the AFA has changed their lives dramatically. I know we have a lot of women in the AFA in general who say that the Asatru Folk Assembly has changed their lives for the better. And the best thing you can do is just let him see it happen. And then if you convince him to come with you, showing up and seeing our community and what we do in person is one of the strongest experiences, one of the best experiences I personally have ever had, and I think that a lot of people would agree with that. It's amazing how many minds can change just by showing up and experiencing what we do in person and not online or behind a computer screen. And I will stress that till the day I die. Doing what we do in person, showing up in person will always have a much greater impact on your life than not showing up, even when it means you have to drive an hour and a half or two, sometimes more, from your house. My husband and I we drove 5 hours to Boston for a dinner because a member asked us to. And I was pregnant with my son at the time. I was like really pregnant. I was like 6 months, 7 months pregnant. We drove 5 hours to Boston, sat down and had dinner for 2 hours, and turned around and drove 5 hours back home all in the same night. Now I'm a Gidea, he's a Witan, so that might not be what we would expect of everyone. I wouldn't ask that of most people, but we do hope that people will find the time to take an hour or two to drive to visit people in person, because nothing compares. I don't know why I'm looking at the chats as I'm talking instead of at all of you. Should I do? Anyways, I'm done. Sorry.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, so we had a couple questions about beauty, and we're going to answer those questions as we go along. So we're going to kind of get into, our theme for the night, which is going to be Beauty and Friðr. And Beauty and Friðr are part of what we have been referring to as feminine virtues. So before we start getting into that, we're going to need to give you a little bit of background on where this came from. So I want you all for a second to think of the algaes room, okay? If it helps, go ahead and stand in the algaes position wherever it is that you are at, okay? So Nick, start paying attention to the chat because we're going to have some interaction for this giveaway. I want you guys to put into the chat and talk to each other, what does that algaes rune represent to you? What does this rune look like? Why do we stand in this position when we greet the day, greet the gods, when we're hailing people? Why is that important? What does that mean to you? So I'm going to kind of go around just a little bit. Githia Erickson, what does the algaes rune mean? Why would we stand this way? You're thinking about it too hard. There you go.
Yeah, you put me on the spot. I'm really good when I have a minute to think about things. So can we ask Sheila first?
Think about this. Think about your body is that center, right? Mm-hmm. And your arms are outstretched into the algaes room position, right? What are you reaching towards? Okay. Who are you
You're
reaching
reaching up to the Aesir, to the heavens, to
Yes.
all the good, the sun, the light, all the good things.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Get the now, and who are we reaching to? What are we doing? You're muted, ma'am.
We're being an antenna. We are putting out as well as receiving. So it's part of the gifting cycle in a way, if you think about it.
Wonderful. So I want everybody in this chat to think about the Algi's rune, okay? So we've got 3 parts of this Algi's rune. We've got in the middle, and then we've got each of those branches here. And I want you to think of it this way, just as an introduction into what we're going to be talking about next. The center of that Algi's rune, this is, connection to the higher beings, connection, divine connection, understanding, protection, right? Now think of the center of that Algi's rune as the folk. Strong, straight, in the center, right? Our folk follow the 9 noble virtues. That is something men and women follow. It is something that is good for the folk. It is virtues for the folk. Okay? So that center of the Algi's 9 noble virtues. On each side of that, we've got 2 arms, right? Masculine and feminine. And so what we're going to be talking about today is going to be a feminine aspect of that, some of the feminine virtues. The 9 noble virtues are for the folk. We're going to be talking about some virtues for our ladies. Okay? Men have their side as well. And the men and women together, identifying as men and women, I want you to think of these feminine and these masculine virtues as spiritual feminine identity. Spiritual masculine identity. Okay? This makes us the folk, and these virtues on the side, that's what helps us come together as one folk, male and female, masculine and feminine. So some of the things that we've talked about, the Githias here on this call have talked about with me, some of our female leadership have talked about with me, is we have specific things that seem to be very natural for women. They are natural virtues of femininity. Does not mean that the men cannot appreciate that. It doesn't mean that they're off limits for the men. They're just things that come more naturally for our ladies, for our feminine ladies. And there are parts of the world and parts of life that naturally come easier and make more sense for our men. And 2 of those things, and I'm going to list these off really quick. I'm not going to, give you the big list, but I'll name these things that we've seen as the feminine aspects, the feminine virtues. And those are regality, frith, duty, beauty, which we're talking about tonight with frith, intuition, altruism, morality, charity, and forbearance. Those are things that we experience. Those are things that we excel at, right? The men, again, have their own side. We'll get into that in another call if the guys want to do that later on. But I want you guys to think about this, okay? The 9 noble virtues are for the folk. It makes us strong as a folk. It makes us good as a folk. What identifies you as a spiritual female, as a spiritual woman? Where does that power of femininity fit in your spirituality? And so that's something that we want to talk about tonight, because beauty and frith are something that are very natural for the ladies. Something that we thrive in that. We nurture those things. We excel at them. We do them often without thinking. These virtues that we're talking about, we will often do without even thinking about it. It's just instinct. It's just that instinct as a spiritual woman to do. Right? So let's get into that. Let's talk about frith first. Okay? Frith, I'm going to go ahead and let Githia Erickson, would you explain to us what frith is before we get too far into the weeds here? And then in the chat, get those opportunities to get this cool book? Put your answers in the chat.
So a little bit later, I'll probably touch on this again because I have a whole thing. But Frith is such a complicated concept, but it's also not complicated. We make it complicated, and a lot of people interpret Frith as being peace, but it's not, because peace implies that there is no friction, that there's no unhappiness, or there's no contention at all. It implies that everything is perfect and happy and wonderful, and we all know that that's not what life really is. We know that when you have a group of people in a room together, just look at the family dynamic. Everybody gets together for Thanksgiving, and the common joke is there's going to be a fight, right? Your uncle and your dad are going to fight because they start talking about politics, or they start talking about football and they both like separate teams or something like that. Frith is peace by choice. And when I say that, what I mean is, and this is literally part of what I'm going to say earlier, so I'm sorry if you have to listen to it again, but the more you hear it, the more hopefully it wiggles its way into your brain and sticks. That sounded condescending. I didn't mean it to be. They internalize the idea that Frith is like mouth is, or the need fire. You cannot create the necessary flame without the friction. You cannot create the thing you need without the friction. The friction is the men who might not get along very well, but who choose to put aside their not getting along because they're standing in a Frith stead. It's the men who 2 minutes ago were ready to punch each other in the face, but who chose to put that aside because there is a woman exerting Frith over them. And by exerting, I mean because she is present, because a woman present is enough to make Frith necessary, because you don't act that way in front of your women folk. You restrain yourself. A Frith stead is a place where people maintain Frith. You hold Frith. And they don't have to be your favorite person. They don't have to be your best friend. You don't have to like them at all, but you acknowledge the fact that while we're in this space, we are choosing to remain peaceful. And I think that's the most important thing about Frith, is remembering that it is a choice. It is an expectation, and oftentimes even a requirement, but you still have to choose Frith. You have to choose to maintain peace and accord with the people you're in the space with. So that's what I got.
Now, you made an important and very important statement. Frith is a choice, right? Frith is absolutely a choice. So we have different areas where we can use Frith as women. We can use this in a physical realm. We can use this at the Hof, in your homes, at a family reunion, at an AFA event, right? So I want you to think of a physical manifestation of Frith. Physical. Something that you can see, hear, visual, something that you can actually see somebody doing, hear somebody doing, feel it, something physical, something you would see, an act maybe, right? So I want everybody to think about that. Everybody who's playing along, tell me what a physical demonstration of Frith would be. Especially you ladies out here, we do this all the time. So, Mrs. East, when you go to the Hof and you see people that you haven't seen for a while, what are the first things that we do as women?
We always give a big hug.
What is that? It's a physical example of what? Of Frith, right? So when you get into that Hof, what does it feel like, Madison, when you see these women that you haven't seen for a month or maybe more? What kind of emotion is involved in that?
I'd say Wunio.
Yeah,
Joy.
absolutely. Yeah. It's the energy of happiness, of peace, is a feeling of belonging. It's a feeling of acceptance, right? So frith doesn't just have to be physical. Frith can be physical where you're physically exchanging gifts, right? You are physically defending your friend. You are physically defending your friend's name when your friend's not around. That's a big one. You know who your friends are when they defend your name when you're not there. It's frith. Physical acts of frith. And Madison just talked to us about emotional acts of frith. Right? That feeling of wunya. Right? When we see each other, when we share frith with one another, there is a way of emotional frith. I am giving you a sense of belonging. I am giving you acceptance. I am valuing your feelings on something. Right? Now, I know you guys have heard the El Shirago say before that sometimes when you have a disagreement with someone, whether it's a breaking of an oath, a breaking of an agreement, you hurt somebody else, it is not always necessarily about who is right or wrong. Sometimes that doesn't matter. What matters is making it right. Emotional frith. What do you have to do to get that right? What do you have to do to have that feeling of belonging? What do you need to do to make them comfortable? To make them feel good being there with you, to feel like they're part of the folk? What do you need to do to make them build a friendship and an emotional bond together? So frith can also have an emotional aspect. Okay. What about a spiritual aspect? Before we get into it, I want you guys to put it in chat. Give me an example of spiritual frith. A spiritual reciprocal exchange, a spiritual choice. As Githia Erickson put it very well. Frith is a choice. Frith is a choice. So I'm gonna pick on my ladies here with me. Githia McNallen. Thinking of frith spiritually with the gods. How do we demonstrate spiritual frith?
Okay. Spiritual frith is acknowledging their presence, to be focusing on them, and to exchange through our thoughts, through our words, something that will be, I'm taking the time, that is part of our gift, is taking the time and the recognition that this is an important thing for us to connect with the holy powers, with the gods, and that they benefit from that too. This is always an exchange, and it doesn't always require that we have need or something like that. We can do it because we're simply reaching out with our hearts full, in the same way we do with our ancestors. It could be in lighting a candle, putting flowers out, doing something special, especially for like the goddesses, where we might do something a little softer, have that cup of tea there in a cup, and just acknowledge that feminine symbolism in that. That, I don't know, be interested in what others would add to that.
Yeah.
But it is very much our divine connection with them. We're putting in the time, we're putting in our attention to them in a very joyous, wonderful exchange as family. So.
Okay. So we've got your physical frith covered, our physical acts of frith. We talked about that. We talked about our emotional frith, right? We just talked about spiritual frith. What other kind of frith can there be? Frith in mind. Partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
When you are with someone that you are in a close partnership with, even if it's a business partnership, a work partnership, a relationship, when that is good and it is reciprocal, and you choose to put that relationship in the forefront? What does that do for you mentally as people? How does that bring you together mentally? Have you guys ever met two friends that can finish each other's sentences? Have you ever met business partners that can just look at each other and know what the answer is going to be to this question in this business meeting? Sheila, can you visualize the dreams of your husband? I know you can. You helped build the AFA.
Of course.
Right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you share that relationship with somebody, Madison, when you are working with someone and you said you don't always see what's in their head, in the end, do you get a product by building that relationship, by sharing these things, by working together, by being calm and collected and trying to build a relationship with that person to see that image and get it on paper? Is that not an exchange of choice? A mental exercise, so to speak? You know? Yeah. When you are in a fruitful situation with somebody, whether, like I said, it can be business partner, it can be your sibling, it can be your spouse, it can be a coworker that you literally hand them something, they know exactly what to do with it. You don't have to speak verbally. You know each other's minds, right? Mental frith. You are interacting with that person reciprocally. You are building that relationship because you make it a priority. You know them. You know how to support them. You know what they need in that moment, right? Whether it's something physical, something emotional, but that's your mind. That's trained to their mind. What they need. Yeah. Now, I would like everybody in the chat. I hope you guys are still playing along. Nick, how are we doing? Do we have participation in the chat? Are we going to have people that might get this book?
Yes. We have probably 16 people on the list.
Excellent. Let's keep going, guys. Let's get some more people to see if they want this book or not. Now, I want you guys all to think of a rune that you are familiar with, right? If you are still learning them and you want to take a second and go look up runes, go ahead. That's okay. We all learn at different paces, all in a different spot. But find a rune or think of a rune that means something to you. Okay? I want you to think about, well, how does Frith relate to that rune? I know Madison mentioned Wunyo earlier, right? That Wunyo energy, the meaning of Wunyo. Madison, how does Frith work into that rune?
I'm drawing a blank.
So Frith is peace and relationships and friendships, and Wunyo is that community, right? So those two go together pretty well, right?
Yes.
Yeah. If you have that frithful relationship, that choice, that intentional choice to make something important, to give it gifts, to give it honor, to nurture that relationship and build on it, that's what creates community. That is what creates joy. You can take any of these runes. It's an exercise. I'm not saying that you have to do this. This is not something that's, AFA religious study or anything like that. It's just something that the El Shiragothi indulges me on talking about. But think about that. How can Frith affect the rune Fehu? How can it affect prosperity? How can it affect your anything? You could apply it to anything. Frith is all around us. Frith is in everything we do if we choose to do it. And one of the reasons that we always say that this is something that's a feminine virtue is this is something that women often do without thinking twice about it. Men are more cautious, right? Men are more cautious. And why? Because while we're running around, silly girls hugging everybody at the Hoff, they're going, I don't know that one. I don't know that one. And my wife, daughter, girlfriend, sister's about to go hug this person and welcome them. I don't know him. I don't know him. I don't know that person. I've never seen this face before. They are our protectors. That's their job. It is their job to be cautious for us because we are inherently, oh my goodness, welcome to the Hoff. Come on in. Here's a horn. This is so-and-so. That's us, right? How many times have you guys seen the meme where the man's walking behind his wife or beside his wife, and he's like, the exits are over here. I have got a person at 12 o'clock. I've got a dog over here, and I've got this. And she's singing like the Scooby-Doo theme in her head. That's real, you guys. But that's also why Friðr is so much easier for the women, because we are so much more open in that regard, right? Now, trauma happens, life happens, things happen to take that from you as a woman. But the ability to be open with your folk and to trust your folk and to know that the men have got our back so that we can be those frithful beings. That is that beautiful balance between our men and our women. And that's something that spiritually identifies us as women. The ability to know I can be welcoming. I can do these things and build this community and build these relationships and bring these families together. And it's okay for me to do that because my men got our back, right? I can be open. I can put myself out there and be in these relationships and build these relationships because I've got our men behind us, making sure that we're okay, right? So I went on about that a lot. Does anybody have anything to add about Friðr before we get into Gythia Eriksson's got an example of a very frithful woman. She's got some examples. Does anybody have anything to add on that before we go forward?
Ooh. Yeah, I think a good example of it is how we work together at our food pantries. Everybody brings something to it. We might be all working together, bagging up stuff, but sometimes the men will take on a particular role and the women will take on something else. And I know I just love being out there among the people and welcoming them and seeing our staff, our team working together and taking care of people. You know, there's that sense of fulfillment and appreciation of each other. And that teamwork is just so fulfilling to do. I would hate to not be able to do that someday, because I think it's a really something very beneficial to the group to be able to come together for something that is so important as feeding a lot of needy people. And we do it very much as our own group, but still we're affecting so many people in such wonderful ways, and they appreciate that. And again, that's kind of an exchange of Friðr as well. When we're out in public and we're doing, because we feel it in our heart, we want to take care of others and be respectful. We do it all, and people are often so surprised that there are people who still carry that in their hearts of, opening the door and doing those things and saying please and thank you, all those things that come so natural to us. But I think we ladies do it so very well, especially at our Hofs, welcoming the new people, making sure that those who are around and in need of some kind of support get that, whether it's in the kitchen or doing something else. We keep our eyes open for what's needed and help take care. I mean, that's part of it, is making sure things run smoothly. And that's part of Friðr, and working together with the folk and keeping things running well as they should.
Absolutely. All right, Gythia Eriksson, you've got somebody that you want to talk about tonight that gives us some information on Friðr, yes?
Yes, ma'am, and I'm going to do my best not to make a lot of faces, because I do that. So I am going to apologize in advance. I took a lot of notes and I'm going to do my very best to make sure that I stay on point. But I do have a tendency, as Witan Fassett sometimes talks about, I don't talk in a straight line, and rabbit holes are sort of a friend of mine. You know, we're real cozy. So one of obviously the topic of our call is very much about Frith this time. Our call, our episode, and something that's really important for women is that we are Frith weavers or peace weavers. Many of you have heard me talk about Frith before. If you're in the Asatru Folk Assembly, I've done it on previous episodes of VNS. I talk about it at almost every national event that I'm at in which I am leading a women's group. And I'm going to keep talking about it because Frith is inherently a part of what we do. It's an inherent part of who we are as women. And I think that it is a very important concept for all of our women in particular to really truly internalize. And that doesn't happen if you don't talk about it a lot, if you don't learn about it at all time. Like you'll never really truly understand Frith, but you can spend a lifetime doing your best to understand Frith. But I feel that way about a lot of things. We're never going to know it all. We're going to do our best though. So, in this particular instance, I'm going to kind of veer off, but I'm going to be speaking about Weltu. I have it written down over here how to say it so that I don't forget. It's Weltio, who is arguably one of the best known examples of a Frith weaver in our stories. So in Beowulf, Weltio is the wife of King Hrothgar, the queen of the Danes. She is the cupbearer and the Frith weaver in the hall of her husband. And to understand the importance of this role and the character of Weltio, it's important to really understand how the queens of old became Frith weavers. So in the time of our ancestors, highborn women were, in many, many cases, most useful to their families as a bride gift. Their greatest honor was to be given as peace brides to enemy clans to create a bloodline that mingled the two tribes and therefore put an end to the feud through kinship. In fact, in many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases, that is the only way that a feud could come to an end, is when the two warring clans or the warring kingdoms became king through the birth of a child. And that required sorry, Swan put over in the comments, as I'm sure you all can see, I lost it. She was a Herul, Queen Wheeltio. I don't know. I'm not good at the pronouncing of things. Shvigo. So try to, for our women in particular, but I think our men can probably do this too. Try to take a minute and imagine what it would be like to be a highborn young woman and to be sent off as a peace bride. And peace bride is, I don't know if I read it somewhere or if I made it up, but for our purposes, it serves. Hopefully you understand what I mean when I say a peace bride, a bride that is given to the enemy to create peace. As a highborn young woman, you would likely be in the throes of grief. Your people are at war. You have family, perhaps brothers or cousins or uncles, and friends who have been killed in the feud by the people of the man you're about to go marry. So you're sent to a strange land to marry a man you don't know, who is responsible for the killing of your people. And in doing so, you are going to a place where it is very likely the people are also grieving because they have family and friends that have been killed in this feud by your people. Sounds kind of like a tense atmosphere, right? Might be a little uncomfortable. And this is where we see the difference between the real peace weavers and those who are not. So a highborn woman's most important role as a peace weaver was to have children. Those children are literal tools of frith weaving because they combine the two families through blood. And force the end of the feud through kinship, as I stated previously. Additionally, though, Frith Weavers are known to be joyful. They always seem to be so joyful. They're happy. They're calm. They're closed-mouthed, as in they keep counsel. They don't gossip. They don't spread secrets or lies. They keep their own counsel. They're loyal, and oftentimes they're very wise. They had an ability to encourage joy and calm in other people, as well as to create and build the bonds between people and communities. More than that, Frith Weavers, they really had to be able to set aside their own personal jealousies and vendettas for the greater good of their people. And this can be really hard to do. So not all women can find the inner Frith Weaver. It sounds kind of cheesy, but some women focus on manipulation with the purpose of divisiveness, on vengeance, or on general negativity. And she will turn everything she touches to sourness and deceit. And we all know negativity is easier to fester in than joy is to maintain. And that sounds it sounds so negative when you say it like that, but we call it being black pilled these days, right? Like, it's a whole thing. You're black pilled. And once you start, it's a very difficult cycle to break. If you can break it, though, there is a path for any women, and because we are inherently frithful, to build herself up, and by doing so, to also build up those around her. So you see here the first. It's just a quote. It's about Modrith. In Beowulf, we see Queen Modrith, who is at first very angry and vengeful, and she is seen as cruel and bloodthirsty, killing men for casting their eyes upon her, and innocent people for displeasing her. She's full of rage, and she took it out on everyone. And this is an example of somebody who, like I said above, just she's stuck in that negative cycle. I'm not going to read the quote. It's up there. You can see it. It basically just says it was not a peace weavery ladyish thing to do to go killing people for perceived slights, basically. And in the next quote, if you don't mind, Nick, there you go. I closed the screen by accident. Sorry. I need to pull my notes back up. In this next clip, we can see, if you read through it, Queen Modrith, is sent as a peace bride to King Offa of Mercia. And we see that she undergoes a transformation so completely that she is not only highly praised, but is considered to be a virtuous queen who is a paragon of a peace weaver. How do you go from being angry and rageful and vengeful, killing people for looking at you funny, to a virtuous and highly praised queen? I am not going to go into that at this point in time. But I can't not bring up Modrith when I'm talking about Frith and a woman's ability to become a peace weaver without mentioning one of the best examples we have of a woman who becomes one, who starts in a negative place and ends in a positive place, because we all have the ability to do that, men and women. It's just finding a reason. So anybody who's ever heard me talk about Frith before has heard me mention that Frith in a woman is inherent, and this is where I'm going to repeat some things that I've already said. But Frith itself is not peace. It's more complicated than that. It's a choice. You have to choose Frith. You have to choose to remain peaceful under the right circumstances in the right places. Two men who don't like each other and who might, in some circumstances, participate in fisticuffs under other circumstances, can find themselves face to face in that frithstead, and they have to choose to remain frithful. Breaking the frithstead by not maintaining frith, by breaking that frith, there have less people have been removed from Frithsteads and removed from their communities for lesser things. But I lost my train of thought on that one. I don't know where I was going, and I was in the middle of going there. Sorry. Either way, much like the rune Nauth is the need fire, you need the friction. You need the friction to create the flame. You need the frictive energy of the men in order for there to be the choice to make to maintain Frith. If it was easy, it wouldn't be Frith. And you can't be frithful by yourself. It can't be just you. Frithful is an exchange. I'm sorry, not frithful. Frith is an exchange. It's an exchange between a person and their ancestors, a person and their gods, a person and their family or other people. It has to be an exchange. So because of this frictive or kinetic energy that is so inherent in men who biologically tend towards violence, and when I say it, think of your warriors, think of your protectors, and sometimes you have to think about your thugs, because thugs are sort of the negative manifestation of a man's natural inclination towards violence. The protector is the warrior is the positive manifestation of that natural inclination. And we need the frithful energy of the peace weaver, who is calm and joyful and desirous of helping to build her people up. It's a symbiosis of men and women. We have different skills, we have different roles, and when we are acting as good and noble Aryan men and women, like we should always be striving to do, we complement each other. And it's important to recognize that, because we're not equal. Men and women are not equal. We are very different. We have different strengths, but it doesn't mean that we don't belong together and that we don't fit in a way that makes sense. So a true Frith Weaver has a good deal of power. Her words are listened to, and oftentimes, as we can see with Weltio, we can change the very outcome of monumental moments. She even gives her own daughter, Freyawaru, in marriage to a warring kingdom as a peace bride. So she's so invested in her role of being a peace weaver that she is willing to send her daughter off to marry in an enemy kingdom, just the way she was sent to marry into an enemy's kingdom. So, Nick, if you'll bring up the first clip for Weltio. Thank you. So this is Weltio in her role as a cupbearer, and I'm going to read this one. Joyous then was the jewel giver, o'er-haired war brave, help awaited the bright Dane's prince, from Beowulf hearing, folk's good shepherd, such firm resolve. Then as laughter of liegemen's loud resounding, it's small on my screen, with winsome words, came Wealhtheow forth, queen of Hrothgar, needful of courtesy, gold-decked, greeting the guests in the hall. And the high-born lady handed the cup first to the East Dane's heir and warden, bade him be blithe at the beer carouse, the land's beloved one. Lustily he took banquet and beaker, battle-famed king. Through the hall then went the helming's lady, to younger and older everywhere carried the cup, till come the moment when the ring-graced queen, the royal-hearted, to Beowulf bore the beaker of mead. She greeted the gate's lord. God she thanked in wisdom words that her will was granted, that at last on a hero her hope could lean for comfort in terrors. The cup he took, hardy in war, from Weltio's hand, and answer uttered, the eager for combat. Beowulf spoke, Bairn of Egtho. This was my thought, when my thanes and I bent to the ocean and entered our boats, that I would work the will of your people fully, or fighting fall in death, in the fiend's grip fast. I am firm to do an earl's brave deed, and end the days of this life of mine in that mead hall here. Well, these words to the woman seemed, Beowulf's battle boast, bright with gold, The stately dame by her spouse sat down. So, Weltiao is herself what I referred to earlier as the peace bride. She was given as a bride to the enemy to contract peace. And in this role she really excelled. We have this passage from Beowulf, which I just read, showing her in the role of cupbearer. She's adorned very richly with expensive clothing and many articles of jewelry. And they make a point of really talking about the fact that she is well adorned, because as a noble lady and a cupbearer, and a peace weaver, it was important to make sure that the people knew she was important and that she was of high standing, because it was really a valuable role to be the queen or to be the cupbearer. It demonstrates to everybody the status of that she's a powerful woman. As a cupbearer, she starts with her husband, the king, giving him the first sip, and she ends with Beowulf. And this is, in fact, showing great honor to Beowulf, who, as the last to receive the horn, is also given the final speech or his battle boast. And it wasn't until Beowulf was finished that the queen took her seat next to the king, and his words, because they were pleasing to the queen, were accepted it by everybody. The fact that she chose to acknowledge that speech, and like it said, sorry. Well, these words to the woman seemed, meaning she approved of them. And a woman approving of a man's words over the horn was a very important thing, because she has the prestige of her role, and as not just the queen, but as the cupbearer, that implies, or not implies, it gives Beowulf even greater honor. So, have to get to the next part of my note, sorry. Yes. So there's also mention later. I don't have the clip of this, but there's mention of her power, the power of her very presence when she enters the hall, and with just the touch of a hand and a word, she's able to soothe a pair of the flaring tempers of a pair of men who had just engaged in what might be considered a contentious fighting, or poetic smackdown, if you will. Weltio is in fact held in such esteem that she is able to speak with the authority of a man in a manner that the men don't find unusual or uncomfortable. In fact, they listen and they take heed. And we see this in her next speech to her husband Hrothgar. If you don't mind, Nick. Thank you. So, in everything that I have seen, people often refer to this as Weltio's sermon in response to the speech that her husband Hrothgar makes, which they call Hrothgar's sermon. And Hrothgar, in his gratefulness to Beowulf for his heroic deeds, has publicly makes the statement that he would like to see Beowulf become his heir. And in fact, he even exclaims that he would like to adopt Beowulf, making him his son. And Weltio is not as super excited about that, because she has her own kids, and she doesn't, she doesn't want to see this become a problem or a feud. I'm gonna pull it up on my screen, but only because on the screen on the VNS screen, oh, Nick, you knew what I was gonna do. Thank you. I appreciate that. He's always on top of everything. So I'm going to read this one too. I'm going to read her sermon. Said the queen of the Shielding. I had to write that one down too, so I would remember how to say it. Said the queen to the Shielding, my lord and protector, treasure bestower, take thou the speaker. Joys attend thee, gold friend of heroes, and greet thou the Geatmen and with gracious responses. So ought one to do, be kind to the Geatmen in gifts not niggardly, Anear and afar now peace thou enjoyest. Report hath informed me thou'lt have for a bairn the battle brave hero. Now is Hurlt cleansed, ring palace gleaming, give while thou mayest many rewards, and bequeath to thy kinsman kingdom and people, unwending thy way to the wielder's splendor. I know good Hrothulf, sorry, that the noble young troopers he'll care for and honor, Lord of the Scyldings. If earth joys thou endest earlier than he doth, I reckon that recompense he'll render with kindness our offspring and issue, if that all he remember what favors of yore when he yet was an infant. We awarded him for his worship and pleasure. Then she turned by the bench where her sons were carousing, Hrethric and Hrothmund, and the hero's offspring, the war young together. There the good one was sitting, twixt the brothers twain, Beowulf of Geatman. So I know that's probably easier to follow if I wasn't reading it in. Sometimes reading it yourself is easier. I don't know. It's easier for me to read than to listen sometimes. But basically what happened here is Wealhtheow's speech is clearly indicating her concern regarding Hrothgar's statement that he views Beowulf as his son. She's reminding Hrothgar that his own children are his rightful heirs, and that if Hrothgar should pass away unexpectedly, there is contention now for his seat on the throne. Her speech is an example of how much power and involvement that she has as the queen in political matters, and her advice is designed to avoid the potential struggle between the Geats and the Danes, because if Hrothgar dies and Beowulf is now an heir by virtue of his adoption and he wants the throne, there is a potential feud with Beowulf and the Geats and the Danes with her sons, who's going to sit on the throne, and are they going to have to battle it out? She's trying to avoid that. And in the next half of her speech, which Nick is going to pop up for me, after having given Beowulf lots of gifts in the form of gold and jewels, and I think some horses, which shows some even greater honor, Wealhtheow addresses Beowulf directly. Wealhtheow discoursed, the war troop addressed she. This color enjoy thou, Beowulf worthy, young man in safety, and use thou this armor, gems of the people, and prosper thou fully. Show thyself sturdy, and be to these liegemen mild with instruction. I'll mind thy requital, thou hast brought it to pass that far and near, forever and ever, earthmen shall honor thee, even so widely as oceans surroundeth the blustering bluffs. Yes. Be, whilst thou livest, a wealth-blessed atheling. I wish thee most truly jewels and treasure. Be kind to the sons, thou living in joyance. Here each of those nobles is true unto other, gentle in spirit, loyal to the leader. The liegemen are peaceful. The war troops are ready. Well drunken heroes, do as I bid ye. Then she went to settle. So she goes to sit down after having addressed Beowulf directly, and with the speech, she's reasserting her earlier wishes directly to Beowulf in this passage. She's reminding him that he is now considered by her, via her first speech, to be an official protector of Hrothgar and Wealhtheow's two sons, and that he shouldn't do anything that would jeopardize their sons' rights to the throne. And even though Wealhtheow's speech to Beowulf is friendly and polite, the last line is a command that Beowulf would have understood clearly. And this moment in the poem is, to me, a stroke of political brilliance on her part. As the peace weaver in the hall, she remains calm and pleasant, as she should, and yet she is still able to redirect the entire moment firmly without causing tension between herself, her husband, and Beowulf in front of their comitatus, which is warband, in front of the warriors. I don't know why I decided to choose a fancy word, but now as modern women, we aren't going to be given as peace brides to an enemy tribe, but that doesn't mean that our roles as Frithweavers aren't just as important. Particularly in the Asatru Folk Assembly, as we tried to rebuild our folk and to build this future for our children and for their children and their children and so on and so forth. We live in easy times in many ways, but peace weaving has never and will never be easy. And a lot of that stems from our own personal battles to become and maintain our frithful inheritance. It is really easy to think one little nasty thought, and that one little nasty thought sometimes slowly and sometimes quickly, depending on our moods, can spiral down the very slippery slope of negativity and jealousy. And I argue that we live in a society that wants us to live in this cycle of negativity and just jealousy and self-gratification, because it prevents us from fulfilling our natural roles as mothers and as friends and as the catalyst that can build our folk up from being build our folk up and bringing them together. So one of the biggest things our women need to do, and I'm not saying that we're all at different stages of this. Sometimes I speak for myself, because I'm not going to choose to speak for other women. I don't know everybody's personal stories, but I know that I have periods in my life where it is easier than others to maintain a positive attitude, and I know that there are definitely times where it's much harder, where the negativity is just it's lodged in there and it's hard to get out. And I think that we probably all experience that sometimes. And I think one of the biggest things as women we can do is make a conscious effort whenever we remember to let go of the negative, to let go of the selfish inclination towards isolation and separatism. And I call it selfish because I'm speaking on a larger scale. I'm not doing myself or anybody I know any good by sitting in my room and not talking, or by not engaging with the folk and doing my best to build that frith and to weave that peace. So again, I'm like I said, I'm speaking in a broader term when I say the selfishness there. The desire for instant gratification, we need to work our way out of that, because instant gratification really is the bane of a lot of things, because it centers on us. We become the entire center of our own universes when we worry only about gratifying ourselves, especially when it's the instant kind. I believe with all my heart that women are happiest and most fulfilled when they can learn to, when necessary, think first of the whole. In my particular instance, having children is one of the best examples and the most in your face example of a woman choosing to put herself second for the betterment of the whole. In this case, the children being the whole, the future, the family, all of that. Not every woman is going to feel that way, though. I understand that not all women can have children. Not all women want children. Whether you think that's good or not, it's just, if a woman doesn't want children, I would prefer she not have children. If a woman can't have children and she wants children, I want them to be aunties, like Brandy was saying earlier. We can always use more aunties. I lost my train of thought. Sorry. We've all met that one mother who was always miserable because they were so wrapped up in themselves that everything else was a point of contention, even their own children. And sometimes we meet those false frithweavers. These women, they always seem to be joyous and wise and kind. They draw you in, and we may not always recognize the negativity or the destructiveness or the manipulation. These women, they don't understand what frith is, or they just haven't realized how unhappy they are. Maybe they have something deep down inside that they don't even know they have to overcome, but it manifests as manipulation and divisiveness. They build themselves up by making those on the outside of their group, be it their family or their friends, the bad guy. And ultimately, rather than creating a healthy and strong community, they will build one full of venom. And that poison will just keep spreading out until everything it touches is just shriveled up and yucky. On the other hand, we have all been drawn to that one woman, the one who always seems so happy and kind and respectful, and the one who doesn't talk smack about people who aren't around, the one who's always willing to defend her friend, even when her friend isn't there to hear it, the one who always seems to offer the best counsel, even when you didn't know you needed it. We have many of these women in the AFA. I believe that our Gideyas are a very good example of this, but I want to name a specific woman in Heather Young, who I believe she's one of our beautiful Gideyas in training, and she is one of the people that I believe is such a shining example of a natural frith weaver. And anybody who is watching this right now who's in the AFA, if you don't know what I mean, I am sorry, but most of you have probably spoken to Heather at some point, even if it was because she just texted you and wouldn't stop texting you until you responded to her, because that's what she does. She's just, it so inherently spreads light through every life she touches. And I firmly believe that my life is better for knowing her. So I wanted to give her a small shout out in this, because I believe she is really just the best shining example of a natural frith weaver I know. I'm almost done. So I am by no means a perfect person. I said earlier, I definitely have my moments where I get stuck in the negative and I have to drag myself out. And sometimes it's with bloody fingernails because I got a claw, you know. But I believe the greatest joy and purpose I have in my personal life is being a wife and a mother. When I want to just get some sleep, or I'm sick, or I'm uncomfortable and I just can't rest because the kids need something, even then, all I have to do is stop and I just look at my kids and they'll be busy doing something. They have no idea I'm watching them, and I just see their faces and my heart swells and I forget that I'm upset about something, or that I'm tired, or that I just want to take a dang break, or even a nap. I haven't had one of those in a really long time. And I'm not really a mushy person, but I love being a wife. I feel I probably genuinely thank the gods and the ancestors at least 3 times a week for my luck, because I firmly believe that the act of giving to my family has made me a better person. It has given me fulfillment, and it helps remind me to be joyous, because like I said, all I have to do is look at my kids. Sometimes all I have to do is look at my husband, but not always. That's a different thing. But we love each other, we respect each other, and we communicate with each other. And those 3 things are 3 things that peace weavers really need to be able to do and to build within their communities, whatever that community is. So for me, that is my tether back to the positive frith weaver that I know I can be, is my family. I'm lucky enough that I get to do that for my kids, and then I get to do that for my husband, and then I get to do that for the AFA as a Gidea. But this is my own personal experience, and to our women, I want you all to spend some time thinking about the things in your life that are good. Think about the things that fill you with joy and purpose. And I want you to think about the things that don't. What can you do, and how can you alter the way that you think about these things to begin that shift towards becoming a frith weaver for your immediate family, or for your friends, for your community, whatever it is, wherever it is. And I want you to remember that the life wealthio, that life, there have been women for centuries before us who have found the strength and the courage to build frith, even in the most hostile environments. And Wiltio is a good example of that. There are many examples. I have a list of them. I'm gonna finish up and just say that we have those women We have our ancestors. We have our gods. We have each other as women to lean on and to find examples in so that we can learn and we can grow and we can build. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Thank you, ma'am. That was great. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Now, one more exercise on Friðr. Get ready if you want this book. Get your fingers on your keyboard or on your phone. I need you in the chat. I want you all to think of one of the 9 noble virtues. Remember, the 9 noble virtues are that center post of the Algi's rune. The feminine, masculine virtues, royal virtues are on the side. Put in the chat one of the 9 noble virtues. Any one of them that you're comfortable with. Okay? Honor, yeah. Industriousness. Fidelity, yeah. Now I want you to put in the chat, how does Friðr relate to that virtue that you just put in the chat? How does courage relate to Friðr? What about Friðr requires courage? What about Friðr relates to hospitality? What about Friðr relates to honor? Right? Put that in there. How does Friðr impact industriousness? How does Friðr impact victory? Whoever does how Friðr impacts victory, Nick, I want their name in an extra time. That's a big one. We've been talking all night about how that can happen. Get your name in twice if you do that. So think about that as well. We've talked about how Friðr can be, physical manifestations of Friðr, mental ones, emotional, spiritual examples of Friðr. How Friðr can tie into runic energies, meanings, pathways. And now think about how Friðr can tie into each of those 9 noble virtues. Because you can put Friðr into every one of them. How? And I don't ask you these questions because I want you to regurgitate my answer. I want you to think about it. Because I want you to be able to take that virtue and tie it into that center post of the folk in those virtues as well. Expand and grow. Learn about yourself. Right? And last but not least, I want you to think about, what does Friðr look like in relation to our folk? It's pretty obvious. We've been talking about that all night, right? How does Friðr impact your relationship with the gods? How does Friðr impact your relationship with your ancestors? Again, these are answers I can't just give you. You need to think about them. Right? You've got your 3 steps, your folk, your ancestors, your gods. Right? You've got all of these runes that you can explore with the concept. Relate them to the center post of Algi's 9 noble virtues. So we have talked about Friðr for about 2 hours, guys. We're going to move on to beauty. This one, I think, people understand on a more basic level. So let's think about beauty. This is another one of those virtues. And we're going to kind of do the same thing here now that we're used to the concepts that we're talking about. What is beauty? And there's a couple questions that people had that we want to go ahead and get to. And one of the questions that we had was, let me find that. I'm sorry. See, I scrolled past it and then I lost it. I apologize, guys. I'm going to answer this one really quick. Can white Mediterraneans, people with Southern European heritage, worship Wotan? Or should they call the celestial father by the name of Jupiter or Zeus? You can absolutely honor Odin. Absolutely. Odin's name was hailed all over Europe, from north to south. Absolutely. All right. And if any of my ladies do have to work tomorrow, please feel free to say goodnight when you need to. I know it's getting late. All right. So we're going to go ahead and talk about beauty. And one of the first questions that we had tonight was about beauty. And it was, Gythia's, what do you find most beautiful about the Hofs aesthetically? So let's go ahead and start with Gythia Erickson.
I'm going to be really cheesy and say I think beauty is my children. It is
They're asking about the Hofs, the specific.
about the Hofs. I'm sorry.
You're okay.
What is my favorite? What is the thing I find most beautiful about the Hofs? Was that the question?
Yep.
Their existence. That by themselves is about the most beautiful thing in the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking about aesthetics, I am particularly fond of Thor's Hof. My husband and I actually did look for a Thor's Hof before it was found down in North Carolina, and I'm very, very glad that we were not successful because I love that Hof. It was the first Hof I had ever. No, I had been to Odin's Hof before. Odin's Hof is beautiful. I love it. I love the fact that it has the yard and it looks like what I think a Hof was supposed to look like before I saw Thor's Hof. But the fact that they exist, I think, is the most beautiful thing in the whole world, because it means that my children live in a world with a Hof. And I know you'll hear a lot of us say that. But I've been Asatru in one form or another for almost 20 years now. And if you had asked me 20 years ago if my children would grow up with 4 plus and counting Hofs in the world, I wouldn't have believed it, because I wouldn't have believed that any group of people could come together and actually make it happen. So that's what I think is the most beautiful thing about Hofs.
Madison, what do you believe is the most beautiful thing on the Hofs, aesthetic wise?
I'm going to have to say the murals that Witan Swan did.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. What about you, Gythia McNallen? What do you enjoy most about the aesthetics of the Hofs?
Got it. Okay. I have not yet been to Njordshof. I will be there next month. I certainly know Odenshof. What I have to say about Thorshof and Baldershof is that, yes, they were former Christian churches, but that is it, because they transform so beautifully to our needs, we filled the space with our spirit. And the way that both Hofs, in similar ways, redesign them, and they truly are places of sanctity and peace. And the murals, each of those murals is what really pulls it all together. It gives us the focus, the lighting, everything about them. It just is breathtaking to see photos and know that I've even been there before. For Odenshof, it was the old Grange Hall, so it was never a church like the other ones, and it's taken a long time to give it that sense of sanctity that the others have, and it will never really have it quite because it's a multi-purpose room. And yet, I think we've done a really fine job with what we have with our ancestors' table and our Guida bomb list and all, and our own mural to Odin. But also, our doors are amazing. The ritual circle, which was built so many years ago by one of our kind of bands of young men who came and left, but they did the Black Sun in brick. Surrounded by trees, we have Thorgrim Odin, Godi Thorgrim Odin's 3 god poles there, and the giant stone that was there the first time we ever saw it, and knew that it had to be an altar stone for us. Just it reminds us how it was always a sacred place from the moment we stepped there. It felt like it was meant to be. And in fact, everything that led to that one occurrence of being there, the timing of it all and everything. I mean, we were led by the gods, and so it makes Odin's very, very special, being the very first one, and very unusual compared to the other ones that have come along.
Mhm.
But they're all places of great sanctity and beauty in their own ways. So
Wonderful.
run on again.
So we're talking now about beauty as a feminine royal virtue, right? Why would that be something inherently feminine? Why is that something that is more natural for our women? It doesn't mean that men don't appreciate beauty. Men appreciate beauty. Men create beauty. Men love art, music, theater. We're going to go through again like we did with Frith. What is the material manifestation of beauty? When we think about beauty in the physical world, we can think of a woman's hair or her clothes. We can think of the beauty of our hofs. What else can be beauty? Madison, what else can be material, physical beauty? Can you think of something beautiful?
Putting me on the spot.
I do that. I'm so sorry. When you look at something and it's anything, what anything can be physically beautiful. What comes to mind for you?
Nature.
Great answer.
Okay.
Absolutely. There is a stirring of the soul at sunsets, sunrises, in the mountains, watching the northern lights. There is something that speaks to your soul on that. Your soul recognizes that beauty. Your heart recognizes that beauty. What your eyes see translates into something that causes emotion, stimulus, happiness, right? Nature, absolutely. That's one we can all absolutely relate to. So physical beauty is something that I'm going to ask you guys, answer in the chat if you're still playing along. Madison, who decorates the house? You or Trent?
I do.
Sheila, who decorates the house? You or Steve? Katie, who decorates the house? You or Cliff?
If it were up to him, he would, but it's not. So
Why do you think that is, you guys? Why are women so attracted to the hominess, the coziness, right? Why? Because it's something that we can do. You give me stuff and some bricks and a roof on it, I'll make you a house and a beautiful home, right? I'm going to bring beauty into that home because it brings comfort, love, peace, right? Beautiful things cause beautiful emotions, right? And that's another aspect of it. Think of it emotionally. How does beauty reflect in our emotions? What kind of emotional response do we have to beauty? Think about that. Put it in the chat. What does beauty do to us emotionally? Kind of talked about it a little bit, right? Sometimes it can make you euphoric. If you see a beautiful piece of art, it can inspire you, right? Could music be beautiful? Music can be beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. Can music motivate you? Can Galder motivate you? Can Galder give you an emotional, spiritual, mental, physical response with its beauty? Yeah. Have any of you ever seen something at a bloat that you reacted to that was beautiful? Flowers on the altar, the folk flame, the fire burning, the way the flames shot up when the gifts were given. You're having an emotional, spiritual, mental response to something that you are seeing physically, right? How many of you feel connected in a beautiful park or the mountains, in a stream? You feel the beauty there? Does it connect you spiritually? Does it bring peace to your mind? Does it create emotion? Yeah. We see that in the beauty in our children. And I'm going to say, no matter what your baby looks like, your baby might be covered in boogers, right? Hair might be all matted on one side, might be dirty, got played out of a mud puddle, might be missing 2 front teeth, right? That baby is beautiful to you, right? Husbands, think of your wives in the morning. Teeth all nasty, hair's all a mess, right? Ain't got no makeup on. She's beautiful though, isn't she? Yeah. So beauty, physical beauty, just talked about it. It can have all of these responses. Let's talk about emotional beauty. What kind of things are emotionally beautiful? Sheila, you got your hand up on that one?
Yeah. When you get to my age, become very sentimental and looking back at photos, thinking about the past, and just the beauty of it all, to have come this far and had so many wonderful things happen in my life. It is really profound, and it increases as one gets older and you have so many more, and then often think of Hugin and Munin and the memories that are there, and we don't want to lose those, and we want to keep our minds active and forever functioning well, and the whole thing that, again, we realize that life as we know it here at Midgarth, starts coming to a close, and yeah, there's so much beauty in the past that we each of us share and have experienced, and um, I look at my home, the things in my home. It's not just the things, the colors and whatever, but what is in my home that brings so much joy and satisfaction, having had those things and collected them over time, things passed on. And again, there's collections of photographs. There's nothing like them. You have to wonder about the poor people who lose their homes. They walk away with their lives, and they're so thankful for that. But they've lost everything except what they have up here. There's nothing left. And there's such sadness, but still, so long as you can remember and visualize those things that happened in the past, there's beauty in that.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of losing everything beautiful, right? And like you said, sometimes all you have is what's left up here. Let's talk about a beautiful mind. Mental beauty. What does that look like? Put it in the chat. Tell me what a beautiful mind looks like. Tell me what's in it. Tell me how it works. What makes it that beautiful? Again, I'm not going to tell you that this is the answer to it. I'm not giving you the answers that you need to write down in your notebook and this is what you need to do. I'm asking you, what makes your mind beautiful? What makes your partner's mind beautiful? How many of you can see a pretty face and it's just a pretty face, but oh, that beautiful mind though? Yeah, that's real. That's real.
The reverse to that, though, is the beautiful face with the ugly mind. It's amazing how quick a person turns ugly when they're a nasty person.
Absolutely. That mind can be affected. Yeah, put it in the chat. What makes a beautiful mind? Are they well read? Are they wise? Do they think the same way you do? Is a beautiful mind full of like song lyrics that you can sing together off the top of your head? What is it that's beautiful in a mind? And how can we as women nurture that? Think about that. When you were a kid, was your teacher a male or a female? What most teachers in elementary school are men or women. Do you guys know? Women. Why is that? Because we are help growing beautiful minds. We are nurturing knowledge, morals, ethics, values, and tradition. Comes naturally as a parent, comes naturally as an auntie. Nurture the minds, create beauty in that mind, right? Are you teaching the children to be vile and negative and hateful all of the time? Are you teaching them how to spiral down a path of negativity? Or are you teaching them to be wise, to learn, to observe, and learn from the mistakes? A great gift is to see the mistakes of others and not repeat that mistake yourself, right? Learn from the past, learn from what you see. But women will nurture a beautiful mind, and you see it in the way that we do it with our children. You see it in the way that we interact with each other, right? How many women on this call have ever felt absolutely horrendously ugly? How many of you have hated the way you looked at one point in time? How many of you had another woman holding you up, telling you, oh no, you're gorgeous, you're great, you're wonderful? Yeah. Women can nurture the beauty of each other's minds. How? By building each other up. By changing those thoughts in our head that tell us we're horrible, we're dumb, we're wrong, we're worthless, we're ugly, and reversing those into nurturing thoughts, beautiful thoughts. You are a woman of worth. You are a woman of beauty. You are a woman to be proud of. You are creative. You are smart. Showing you all the things to remember how beautiful you actually are. Nurturing a beautiful mind. And women do that naturally for each other, and they do that naturally for others. It's that nurturing nature we have. And spiritual beauty. What does spiritual beauty look like? How many of you have ever been touched by a prayer that you've heard? A bloat that you've been to? An imagery put onto an altar? How many of you have ever been moved by just a moment when you had a realization that I get it, I understand. I feel that connection with the gods. Spiritual beauty, right? So that's what I've got for beauty, guys. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Any questions in the chat on that? Anything to add on any of those things? And the same thing kind of applies, take beauty. Now go back into your 9 noble virtues. Give me one, any of them. Truth, honor, industriousness, perseverance. What's beautiful about that? What makes truth beautiful? Somebody tell me what makes truth beautiful. Find a way to make it work. Take your understanding of truth and put another layer of understanding on truth. What does it mean to you? How does truth grow as a virtue when you add it to another virtue like beauty? Yeah. The runes. Take a rune. Any rune you like, any rune you're comfortable with, any rune that you want to work with or concentrate on. How can you relate that to beauty? How can you make that energy beautiful? Does it need to be counteracted for beauty? Does it enhance beauty? Is there something about it that's beautiful? Is the look of it aesthetically pleasing? Again, these aren't answers I can give you. These are answers you have to find on your own. But take something simple and build upon it with another layer of understanding. All right. I think we do have one more question from go the east. Ladies, which Hoff is your favorite and why? Sheila, I want to go ahead and start with you. You're muted though, ma'am.
Unmuted. Odenshoff was such a turning point in my life, a turning point in our lives. We never thought we would ever really have a Hoff. It was always out there, you know, a bit of a dream, like is no matter how many years we kept trying to raise the funds. In a way, you know, we didn't look for a Hoff. We just kind of thought it would happen someday. But meanwhile, we'd saved the money. And when that moment happened, when it was basically gifted to us as we were inspired to go check it out, it felt so right. And it was so life-changing for every one of us in the AFA. The fact that Hudenshoff was there. The old Grange Hall was there for us at the right price, at the right time, in the right community where people, the worst thing they are is Christian. You know, they're not going to bother us. They just have their intolerance through their ignorance. And we've done so many good things in that community. It's central enough that people can come from all over. We can camp there. We can have wonderful celebrations there. It is quite the ideal for being the very first Hoff of the AFA. So with that, yeah, what a joy it's been. It's got to be my first, you know, it's a first love, you know, and the other Hoffs are just as beautiful in their own ways. But this is very special in what it's meant for all of us.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Madison? What's your favorite Hoff and why?
I'd have to say my version of Odenshoff for Sheila is going to have to be Thorshoff. It's where it all began for me and for Trent, and it's such a big part of our lives, and the friendships and everything that we've made there are incredible. And so I love all the other ones. I love Nordhoff, but Thorshoff does hold a special place. So yeah.
For me, of course, it's going to be Baldershoff because the walls literally have my blood, sweat, and tears mixed with the paint in that building. There is always going to be a piece of me in that building, and there's probably always going to be a piece of that building somewhere under my skin. I have more holes from nails and splinters. And did I ever mention that every member of my family got a tetanus shot because of that Hoff? True story. But yeah, it's always going to be my favorite. You know, as many Hoffs as we get, we could have one that's grander, bigger, more expensive, more stained glass, cleaner, different paint, majestic. Baldershoff would always still be my favorite. It's always going to be home, you know? Yeah. All right. That looks like that is all of our questions. Oh, wait, hold on one second. We did have a donation. Monica in British Columbia donated $100 to the South African Fund. Thank you so much. That is so generous. We appreciate that so much, and the folk over there appreciate that as well. Thank you very much. All right, so that is going to bring us to the end. Producer Nick, can we get a drum roll, maybe, if you have one on hand? And the result of throwing all of these wonderful commenters into a random name generator, can you tell us who is going to get a copy of Heimskringla, the Lee Hollander translation? Here we go. Isn't he great?
He is amazing.
Oh, Rachel K.
Wow.
Rachel K. I am going to need you, Rachel, to go ahead and send us the address where you would like to have this book sent, and we will get it mailed off to you. Congratulations.
We definitely know Miss Rachel, and all of us know her daughter's artwork. I think we got her address.
I'm pretty sure we've got her address. I just didn't want to put her on the spot. But somebody needs to let Miss Rachel know that she did win, because I think she had to take off if I saw that in the chat, didn't I? Maybe? No? Are you still here, Rachel? She might be gone already. So we need to let Rachel know that she's got a book coming her way. All right. Well, we appreciate all of you guys being here. Please share this if you thought it was helpful. Discuss it with each other. If you are interested, we can definitely go through more of these awesome feminine royal virtues if you would like to do that on the 5th Wednesdays of the month. As you noticed, the Alshira Godi and producer Rice gave us a pretty neat name for our 5th Wednesdays of the month, and they are called the 5th of Brandy. So I will be your host on the 5th Wednesdays of the month with my fellow lady leadership and some other special guests as we go through things. So I look forward to talking to you guys next time, and we'll go over this again if that's what you'd like to do. Appreciate all of you being here. Appreciate your support. Hail the gods, hail the folk, hail the AFA, and remember, victory never sleeps. Have a great night.
Good night.
I'm supposed to have a video ready, aren't I? Okay.
You are.
Let me get that. Oops. Oh. All right, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Oh, where's that video? I'm just ruining everything. Here we go.
Here we go, guys.